Today's video is brought to you by 1st Phorm. This is a pro-freedom supplement and nutrition company. They are one of us, folks. And when I think of their products for you, I think of adding value to your life. So there are two products that I need you to go check out. There will be a link in the pinned comment and on the link tree that tells them that I sent you. Go browse their wares, but first is their meat stick. This is a 20 gram protein stick. Think smoked meat. Doesn't need to be refrigerated. Eat it on the go when you're hungry. And the second thing is their energy drinks. It's an energy drink that doesn't have a bunch of crap in it. 1st Phorm has been eliminating dumb ingredients since before it was cool. When you pour it out, for instance, it looks like water. Thanks to 1st Phorm for making today's video possible. And let's get into the video. I'm going to take y'all back a little bit on this one. Do you remember a couple years ago when it was like the hip thing for every rabid anti-gun leftist out there to spout off of the mouth with statements like, well, the reason that gun owners like guns is because they are compensating for the size of their manhood, you know, weird crap like that, right? It was everywhere. In fact, like the Huffington Post and a few other places, like literally published articles analyzing why that was the case. And, you know, all of it had some kind of super special social science associated with it that we all know is absolutely ludicrous. And, you know, personally speaking, sample size of one, I mean, I can tell you that that is certainly not the case. And really the whole concept illustrates a severe lack of understanding of the subject matter, because why make such big leaps when you already had the low-hanging fruit of caliber choice and sexual preference? I mean, we all know somebody who shoots 40 cal. And don't even get me started on 5.45. I kid, I'm sorry. Like I said, low-hanging fruit, that wasn't all that hard to do. Really easy to find. You know, just saying. I don't know why they had to go there. But basically, we all knew this was bull crap. And the premise goes something like this. Like the level 1 analysis is like guns are a particular shape. And then like the level 2 is they're used particularly when we're talking about like the semi-automatic rifles, right? They're used for masculine pursuits, right? If you think like AR, AK, oftentimes you'll see them list the SCAR right next to them. And I sort of agree with them on the SCAR people. Like, you ever met somebody who owns a SCAR? I'm sorry. Again, low-hanging fruit. Couldn't help myself. I will attempt to be less childish throughout the rest of the video. Weapons are a projection of power, right? That's concept 2. Concept 3 is that if you have something wrong with you, or you perceive that you have something wrong with your factory equipment, that you may be under some distress. You may be stressed out about that situation for a variety of reasons, and you may go out and seek to find things elsewhere that are within your control that you can use to fill that void. Okay, I mean, this sort of hits a little bit close to home because I recently had a dick diminishing operation. I mentioned this in my video where we went out and tested the BRN 180, where I couldn't go prone because I had a mass removed from my 5th appendage and it was bothering me. I couldn't do things. I had some limitations for a while and I felt a sort of type of way about those limitations. And of course, y'all hopped in and made me feel better about it. You know, I think my favorite comment was something along the lines of like, I wish I had some extra mass that I could give up, or bro had enough that he could spare some for the doctors, you know, stuff like that. But I think that at this point, you guys can at least plot where we're going, right? So they went out and actually tested it. A bunch of scientists went out and conducted a study where they asked people questions about their firearms ownership and a matrix of questions that they use to determine whether somebody's got a little pee-pee or not. Turns out that is exactly the opposite. The inverse of the hypothesis is true. Turns out that you are more likely to be lacking if you are lacking a pew. I am not kidding. This is a peer-reviewed study, and it's not like Gun Owners of America or FPC or somebody like that went out and cherry-picked a bunch of data for the purposes of making it look a certain way. In fact, if you read the study, you could tell that the people who conducted the study were serious that they thought that they were going to find Pinocchio Pequeño. Now, I will have this linked in all the relevant places so that y'all can go read the whole thing if you would like to. But what I would like to share with you today are some fantastic data plots. Now, these are controlled for age group, and generally speaking, what I will say is the older age groups don't really care. But when you go down to like the 45 to 59, the 30 to 44, and the 18 to 29 group, you really start to see some kind of show in the data, and they talk about why that might be in the study. But what I would like to show you first is the penis size dissatisfaction to the probability of any gun ownership. And what you find is the more dissatisfied you are with the size of your cock, the less likely you are to own a firearm. Next up, phallic dissatisfaction with the probability of owning a military-style rifle. And this one is pretty stark, if you ask me. And then lastly, self-identified dissatisfaction with oneself and the total number of weapons that they own. And again, this is a compendium of factors. This is self-identification of whether you feel as though you are inadequate, how many partners you've had, whether you've sought any kind of enhancement type stuff. So like there's objective and subjective factors that they've used to identify a point system on which you can rank somebody's dissatisfaction with lack of pipe laying capacity. Now, I've been off the market for a little while, so I don't know what it's currently doing, but I know what the profiles and things look like on Tinder and Plenty of Fish and all those dating websites. And I can't tell you the number of times I would see a woman post something like, if you own guns, don't even message me. And I would say, ladies, you might rethink that idea, because if a dude doesn't own any guns, lack of equipment seems to be a trend. Now, many of you may or may not know this, depending on how long you've been watching the channel, but I am actually a scientist by education. So I hold a bachelor's degree from Ohio University in biological sciences with a minor in chemistry, and I was a scientist, a chemist specifically, for 5 years out of school. And I had a lot of fun doing that, but I decided to leave because chemistry had been infected with communism, and until we return to the days of alchemy and weapons production, there is no place for me in the sciences. Looking at these data, you might say, well, there's clearly a correlation there. Remember, correlation does not equal causation, folks. But what could be possibly an impactor that could produce this phenomenon? And when I look at this, I see really a couple things that you must consider. The first is biological capacity. So think a bracket system, and this is raw genetics. And you've heard it said that you can't outwork your genetics. Well, you can work against your genetics to a degree. And then the second thing that we must consider are environmental and development factors that can impact the expression of those genetics. So things like testosterone, things like physical activity, lack of obesity, a good diet. There's there's 1,000 factors, right? And if we go back to that bracket, if you do none of the things that positively impact development, then you're going to find yourself towards the bottom of that expression, the biological capacity. You're in your bracket and you're towards the bottom. If you do some of those things, you're going to end up somewhere in the middle there. And if you do all of the things, you might end up towards the top. And really, it's a crapshoot on what positively impacts development and what negatively impacts development. There have been hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of studies on different developmental phenomenon and what impacts them. But we know for a fact that when it comes to male anatomy development, that testosterone is king. So to be a little bit more specific, if you are raised to be a leftist ninny that sits on the couch and doesn't do anything all day except for play video games, don't get me wrong, I like a good video game every once in a while, but if you do nothing, you don't compete in anything because competition is a capitalist ideal and we are agents of the state, you don't eat well because your mom's compost pile hasn't matured yet and she feeds you a bunch of soy bullcrap so you're obese and your testosterone level is through the floor, well, you're going to grow up and have certain particular political ideologies, and also your development may have been a little bit. Y'all get the idea. So, Kings, lay pipe and load mags. Have a good weekend, everybody.